To Representative Winstrup's question, it just brings back to my mind this issue of Gitmo. When we're talking about people taken on the battlefield, people taken for questioning, intelligence gathering, do you support the president's plan? I just came back from Gitmo a couple of weeks ago, carried a lot of legislation since I've been here in a very short amount of time on the issue of Gitmo. Do you support the president's proposal to close Gitmo by the end of this year and transfer those terrorists back to this country, to U.S. prisons?
Thank you for that question. I don't think the president has a plan to close Gitmo and return all the detainees to this country by the end of this year, because there's a law that prohibits that. The president does have the stated intention to close Gitmo, and I'm in favor of the safe closure of Guantanamo Bay. I've been there too. I think.
Would that include the core that can't be released to come back to the United States prison system?
They have to be incarcerated in some way. There's no question.
The U.S. prison system?
It cannot.
Mr. Secretary, do you support them coming back to the U.S. prison system?
There has to be some final disposition.
Is that the only option for a final disposition? Is the U.S. prison system?
That is an option that is available.
What's the other alternative?
But
what's the other?
Just a moment. But it's now forbidden by law to do that.
This president's been known to override the law. It's not that this would be breaking news. So, do you support? Not that you. What's the other alternative? If the U.S. prison system is not the final destination, what's the alternative? Where would they go?
I think that we need to work with those of you on Capitol Hill to find a lawful disposition for people who cannot be transferred or released safely from Guantanamo Bay. The reason why I think it's desirable to close Gitmo, though I realize it's now lawful to transfer people to the United States, is that I think it still provides a rallying point for jihadi recruiting. And I think that's unfortunate. That's the reason to try to close it. But I say safely close it. We need to find a way to safely close it, and that needs to be lawful, and that's got to be done in cooperation with you.
I appreciate it. As you know, Mr. Secretary, this committee is undertaking an investigation of the transfer of the Taliban 5 from Gitmo to Qatar in May of 2014. I'm just asking, in light of the committee's responsibility to conduct a comprehensive assessment based on a review of this important subject, will you commit today, where the previous secretary left off, to continue the department's engagement in ensuring all the requested materials provided, and to work with the interagency to ensure that requested information is provided in those limited instances in which other organizations in the U.S. government have inequity?
You bet, Congresswoman.
I appreciate it. And then my final question is, our president, as the commander-in-chief, said in his State of the Union address that the #1 threat to the national defense is climate change. Admiral Mullen, just a few years ago, said he believes the #1 national defense issue in our nation is the debt in our country. Do you believe that the debt this nation is carrying, nearly $18 billion, as we're sitting here as well having budget conversations, is more of a threat to this nation's national security than climate change?
There are a number of serious dangers to the future of our country.
I would agree with you, sir. I'm just asking, I don't know you well. I'm just trying to get a perspective from where you're coming from, as we're going to be voting on a huge leap in this budget. And I think the American people want to know where the national defense leader is coming from as well. Do you believe that the nation's debt is a greater issue than climate change, as our commander-in-chief has stated?
I think they're both serious problems, and there are other serious problems that are not those two, and that we have to deal with all of those strategic challenges at the same time. You're naming two of the problems.
I'm naming what the commander-in-chief said as he puts forth a budget that you guys have been defending here for 3 hours now. I'm just saying, he says the greatest threat to our nation is climate change, and we're trying to make an argument that says, you know, the greatest threat to this nation, and trying to rally people in understanding, is that we have an issue of debt that an admiral went on the record to say was a serious consequence and a threat to the survivability of this country. Did you agree?
I think that to the extent that the deficit drives budget behavior like the year-to-year struggle with sequester that we've faced, that is a challenge to our national security because it's a challenge to our national defense. I think we have threats around the world that are very dangerous to us. I think that, to get back to an earlier line of questioning, the strength of our nation depends upon other instruments of national power than our military power. I think in the long run, the strength of our nation depends upon our ability to educate people and to have scientists and engineers. There was a discussion of our scientific base earlier. There are many, many ingredients to making a healthy and productive America going forward. We need to tend to them all, and I think we had to have some balance in how we approach these things. So I'd appeal for balance and a strategic view that looks at all of these issues.
Thank you. Mr. Zinke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And gentlemen, the country is in your debt. General, I've known you a long time, and certainly for your service.